Ped comes from the Greek word for child. The same root also has the meaning foot, cped, but in English words it usually isn't hard to tell the two apart. Pedagogy, the art, science, or profession of teaching. His own pedagogy is extremely original. It sometimes alarms school officials, but his students love it. Since in Greek agoagos means leader, a pedagogos was a slave who led boys to school and back, but also taught them manners and tutored them after school. In time, pedagogue came to mean simply teacher. Today the word has an old-fashioned ring to it, so it often means a stuffy, boring teacher. The word pedagogy, though, is still widely used, and often means simply teaching. And pedagogic training is what everyone majoring in education receives. Pedant, 1. A formal, unimaginative teacher. 2. A person who shows off his or her learning. At one time or another, every student encounters a pedant who can make even the most interesting subject tedious. It isn't always easy to tell a pedantic teacher from one who is simply thorough. Some professors get an undeserved reputation for pedantry from students who just don't like the subject much. Regardless of that, a pedant need not be a teacher. Anyone who goes around displaying his or her knowledge in a boring way can qualify. Pediatrician, a doctor who specializes in the diseases, development, and care of children. Children in the U.S. usually see a pediatrician until they turn at least 15 or 16. Since iatros means physician in Greek, CIATR, words such as pediatric naturally refer to children's medicine. Pediatrics is a fairly new medical specialty. Until about 1900, children were considered small adults and given the same medical treatment, only milder. Benjamin Spock was the most famous pediatrician of the 20th century, and his book Baby and Child Care changed the way millions of Americans raised their children. Encyclopedic, 1. Of or relating to an encyclopedia. 2. Covering a wide range of subjects. Someone with the kind of encyclopedic knowledge she has should be competing on Jeopardy! In Greek, paideia meant not simply child-rearing but also education, and kyklios meant general. Thus, an encyclopedia is a work broad enough to provide a kind of general education. The world's most eminent general encyclopedia, the Encyclopaedia Britannica, is a huge work that covers every field of human knowledge. But encyclopedic doesn't have to refer to books. It's often used to describe the wide-ranging knowledge that certain types of minds just can't stop acquiring. Trop comes from the Greek tropo, meaning turn or change. The troposphere is the level of the atmosphere where most weather changes, or turns in the weather, occur. And the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn are the lines of latitude where the sun is directly overhead when it reaches its northernmost and southernmost points, on about June 22nd and December 22nd every year, that is, the point where it seems to turn and go back the other way. Tropism, automatic movement by an organism unable to move about from place to place, especially a plant, that involves turning or growing toward or away from a stimulus. The new president was soon showing a tropism for bold action, a tendency that seemed more the result of instinct than of careful thought. In hydrotropism, a plant's roots grow in the direction of increasing moisture, hoping to obtain water. In phototropism, a plant, or fungus, moves toward light, usually the sun, perhaps because, in the colder climates where such plants are usually found, concentrating the sun's warmth within the sun-seeking flower can create a warm and inviting environment for the insects that fertilize it. In thigmotropism, the organism moves in response to being touched. Most climbing plants, for example, put out tiny tendrils that feel around for something solid and then attach themselves or curl around it. When microbiologists talk about tropism, however, they're often referring instead to the way a virus will seek out a particular type of cell to infect. And when intellectuals use the word, they usually mean a tendency shown by a person or group which they themselves might not even be aware of. Entropy, 1. The decomposition of the matter and energy in the universe to an ultimate state of inactive uniformity. 2. Chaos, randomness. The apartment had been reduced to an advanced state of entropy, as if a tiny tornado had torn through it, shattering its contents and mixing the pieces together in a crazy soup. With its Greek prefix n-, meaning within, and the tro root here meaning change. Entropy basically means change within a closed system. The closed system we usually think of when speaking of entropy, especially if we're not physicists, is the entire universe. But entropy applies to closed systems of any size. Entropy is seen when the ice in a glass of water in a warm room melts, that is, as the temperature of everything in the room evens out. In a slightly different type of entropy, a drop of food coloring in that glass of water soon spreads out evenly. However, when a non-physicist uses the word, he or she is usually trying to describe a large-scale collapse. Heliotrope, any of a genus of herbs or shrubs having small white or purple flowers. A long bank of purple heliotrope lined the walkway, and her guests were always remarking on the flower's glorious fragrance. Helios was the god of the sun in Greek mythology, and helio came to appear in a number of sun-related English words. The genus known as the heliotropes consists of about 250 species. Many are thought of as weeds, but the best-known species, garden heliotrope, is a popular and fragrant perennial that resembles the forget-me-not. The heliotrope tends to follow the sun, that is, turn its blossoms toward the sun as it travels from east to west every day. But the fact is, heliotropism, turning toward the sun, is common among flowers, and even leaves, and some, like the sunflower, are more dramatically heliotropic than the heliotrope. Those in the far north actually use their petals to reflect the sun's heat onto the flower's central ovary during the short growing season.